not entirely sure that I can already reflect on what I've been doing, because it's all very fresh and we installed everything less than 2 days ago, and it's only now that I see what I've done, more or less. It's been a very intense process, and especially even though it seems like a rather long and generous time frame, starting with the conference in September, then coming back here and creating a piece of work, even though the brief was very open, still the time was rather short. So I can only see now what I have done, and I can maybe talk about it next month more fluently. Because when it all started with you sending us an email or this text, and sometimes I kept going back to it, and I used one sentence of it in the dialogues that I've been having with the puppet, this character helping me fulfilling this task, which I felt was quite demanding. So who do you turn to when you have not many people to turn to? So I created her. And let's see. And the question I asked the puppet as well, where I quote the aim of the project is, how does site-specific art inform us about the relationship between contemporary society and the countryside, the land or the landscape? To which strategies should artists employ to avoid to be instrumentalized? So this is what we started with. And I still cannot answer these questions, even though I've been working with this for since September pretty much. Because on one hand, of course, I want to reflect on my own work, of course, and connecting it to where I am working with it. But at the same time, I cannot reflect on my practice while I'm working in the middle of it. It takes some stepping back and then looking into it again. It's very much like writing a text. In the end, you get fairly blind of what you're writing about, and then you might give it to somebody else to have a look at it. Does this make sense to you, or what do you see here? And I think I'm now at this point to say, this is the way I've been working, and what do you see in this work? And I've been very happy about just the last 3 days, because I've been able to take what I've done with me and looking again at it when I wasn't here, and I could see that the work I had done so far was very static, even though for me it was a lot about movement or interaction with an object or with the surroundings, the locations, but it wasn't visible in the work I had done so far. So it's been really good that Eric could help me with this last-minute video, even though it seemed fairly mad just to try and shoot a video 2 days before the work was supposed to be finished. But I think the video explains, or it shows more of what I wanted to say with it. I've been dealing with an object, this thing behind me, this fragment based on, can be an architectural feature, could be a set design, could be a facade or a surface, which is so heavy and almost impossible to handle, and I still try to drag it around, and it becomes very comical in a sense. But on the other hand, it's on wheels and I can spin around with it. So I take it and turn and twist, and I keep framing, but at this time not framing the 360 degrees, so it becomes blurred, but what do I see in the end? And the end of this loop, or the beginning, is that it ends in the same position pretty much. So when I now look at the initial questions, I think I'm back to the start. I still have the same questions, and for me the research starts now, because now I have the theoretical part that you've been, or that we've been discussing during this conference, and I have my practical work, and now I want to merge these two fields. So to me this is just one step. To me, well, this seminar has been very helpful in many ways. it's been this possibility of bringing people together working in related fields, but at the same time coming from different standpoints in different countries. But to me, just even the term of site specificity hasn't had much of an impact, because when I come here to this region, I'm not from here, but it's this question, how much do you need to know about a place in order to be able to work with it? But to me, it's not so specific, if I can say it like this. To me, it's like it's a new place, and I need to get my tools sorted out in order how to look at it. Because what is specific? What is specific about this place? And is this what I work with? Or do I use it as a starting point to become more specific about my work? It would be interesting with specificity, I think it's also drawing lines saying this is a very specific place, and this makes it distinct from other places. Whereas I don't see this distinction, I have to say. It's another smaller town setting which struggles with the similar issues as they do everywhere in other European countries I've seen, with an undefined town development, with industrial areas outside, with the richer people living higher up, it's like many other places. So what is so very, very specific? This is one of my questions. Or what makes you go to places? Which again also brings back the puppet, because she would blame the artist of having been dragged to an area, and then the roles switch. Then the artist becomes the puppet being dragged. So what's the specificity?
It's not really a question, but as you said, I mean, things just happen, and it is hard to. I mean, just like new ideas just start to pop up. It will last for a while, but I was thinking about what you said yesterday. I think about who as an artist you react to a context where artistic practices are kind of put into the question, and where everything is about criticality and everything. And I think it was very interesting also. First, your idea not your idea, but your encounter with the puppet. But then how you have to position yourself, not to stop working. And I think it's interesting now, I think, to see how, because it's not about, critique is a tool, but it's not about destroying. And I see, if I think now to Ricardo, he was really struggling during the seminar, especially with the context. And then he came with his performance, which was about that, I think. Natsuko, then she said, okay, I'm going to go beyond discursivity, I'm going to do these paintings. Just as a counterpoint. And you too, you met the puppet and you had this conversation, and also I don't know if you were talking about studio practice also, if it is not a kind of a reaction or just a moment in your career, I don't know. But anyway, I think it's very interesting, and again, it's not a question, I don't know if you can start from there, but to see in the end how all of you kind of reacted to this proposal, to work in a critical context where everybody was being put into the test. Me too as a curator or researcher. Yes, so just think about that. So I don't know if there is any way to jump.
Anyway,
for you to, I mean, if you want to develop on that or not, but it's just something that came up in that.
Of course, when you are set into this framework, there are reactions to be expected, and I think just finding out now that there are probably even more questions than before we started is already quite a sign of that there's been many things happening. So to me, the biggest question at the moment is, how do we use what we have learned or what we question? How do we take it from here to somewhere else, and how do we keep on a dialogue and an exchange? Because this was for me the very starting point of the seminar, that this was really this moment of exchanging. Even though people had different opinions and different strength in putting their opinions on the table, and it might have been for somebody that they felt, I don't know, a bit awkward probably, but it's this just this generosity of being able to express what you think about a certain topic, even though you haven't tested it before. And you develop, this is how you start developing your questions. You start from somewhere where you don't know the answers yet, and of course it might be misleading to a certain degree, but in order to develop also these questions, just these at times highly critical settings can be extremely useful. I was quite pleased to hear that you said you were surprised by these works and that you had expected them to be differently. Because in the beginning I think you wouldn't admit to having expectations, or you were quite it was all very open. But of course, to a certain extent, you have an expectation. And to hear now afterwards that these expectations, that you don't see them happening, I think this is quite good to have this moment of surprise.
I don't think, I mean, I don't know if I would frame it as expectations, because it would mean, I would more like say that it was something that, what I could imagine it would be. More than expectation of like if it were an assignment. But I'm not an artist, and I just realized that what I thought it could be was really like very academic, like scholar. How do you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, very boring in fact. What I thought it could be, you know, like the basic project of finding a site, documenting a site, and imagining a project that you could put in a site in here. And I really didn't know, and I remember this question we were trying to know what I had in mind, and I kind of resisted to give you any answer. It was also because I didn't want to be put in the position of the commissioner.
Yeah, but aren't you to a certain extent?
Huh?
Aren't you to a certain extent? I mean, what does it mean to you to be in the position of the commissioner?
But just to express expectations.
Yeah.
I much more see it as an experiment that we all did together. You as artist, me as a researcher in this context, and yes, in the end, it's a great surprise, in fact, to discover the exhibition. Yeah.
And now, what do we do with these discoveries?
But so is it
I think it's a fair question. What do we do with these discoveries? Because now, I mean, I can just talk for myself. I've again, even though I always try to make work that I still can continue working with, I always end up with some objects that are impossible to carry around. Even though I put them on wheels, still it doesn't work. And what do you do with this in the end, and where does it go to?
I was asking me the same question because when now that it's kind of the end of one process, I mean, we still have to work on a few things, and I still have to write my own part of the job, I mean, not to do my text. But like now that we talk, and we talked before with Ricardo and Atsuko, I really I measure, in fact, the amount of work that has been done by everybody and the material that we have. And I really want to. I also have the feeling that it is a beginning, in fact. And I was thinking like we really have. I really want to find a way to go further with material. And I don't have like the proper answer now. Very, I cannot say what it is, but I mean, I think too that it's a beginning of something else.
In a way, it surprised me that we at all made an exhibition, I have to say, from the starting point of criticizing or reflecting on other art projects, that then we make a show. We could have also said we don't make any art work, art objects, shows, whatever. We just continue the conversations. We create a meeting place or a, how do you call it nowadays, a think tank, or a different format than making a show. I'm still thinking about how did we come to this? Yeah.
But it's quite funny. It's too early for me to know if it makes sense what I'm going to say. But I was thinking, but because now I'm going back, to the historical beginnings. So let's say the 60s, 70s, and all these thinking about the art object. And like site specificity being a way to challenge the art objects. And we know the stories, the critique of the art space, the commodification of the art object and everything. And it started with, that's where it started, site specificity for contemporary art. But in fact what we have seen is how problematic it has become, like site specificity, especially now being in ballet, with related to tourism, to develop the attractiveness and visibility of places and whatsoever. But more generally also artworks in the public space or even in big institutions, and I kind of felt sometimes a frustration to see how art is being used or misused. And so in the end, that's the great surprise for me, in the context of a work of research which is based on site specificity, to go back to the gallery space, to go back with subjects, and it's kind of the end of the loop, or not the end of the loop, but it's looping in some way. If I think about the history of site specificity. In a very positive way, not like a return to something back or past, but it really moves forward. I don't know.